Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's comedian Edgar Rivera, and I'm joined today by my brothers, comedian Eric Nieves, Dr. Dan Radner, and for the very first time, we have our very first guest, comedian Nick Alexander, yo. And you're
What
listening
up?
to Brothers in Arms, a new way for men to talk, yo. What's up, brothers?
What's up? What's up?
What's up, Eric?
What's going on, Eggy? Dr. Dan, how you doing?
Good. We're like just passing this around like a hot potato.
Like a hot potato. So happy to have our first guest, man. Nick, it's so good to have you here, bro.
Yeah, man. I'm glad to be here, fellas. It's great for having me on. I salute what you guys have been doing, and I think it's helping, like Edgar and all you guys' intentions. You know, I think people are getting more and more just involved with that just talk to for men to share their feelings and what they've really been going through and unpack stuff and you know, yeah, I'm rooting for you guys, so I'm happy to be here and talk.
Thank you for being here, man. Thank you definitely for being here. I'm very excited. Dr. Dan, how are you, man? How's everything? How was this week for you?
It was really good. You know, as always, the weeks are a blur, but I'm really excited to be here. There's a highlight of my week talking to you guys. And now to add in Nick, especially knowing that he has actually paid attention to what we do, he's watched what we do, I'm really interested to hear his perspective on things.
Nice. What about you, Eric? How you been, brother?
I've been good, man. My wife just came home from vacation, so it's good to have her home. Yeah, listen, it's weird.
So you didn't go on vacation with her?
No. Listen, we a broke family. Either one of us could afford to go, and the other one couldn't, and I made the sacrifice. But we're going to Florida. We're going to Florida and Orlando together, so that's coming up soon.
Okay.
And let me tell you something. The secret to a good marriage is to let your partner leave the house. Okay? Let your partner leave the house and let them act like a little bit of the life they had before you, minus the sex with other people. Everything else, I'm talking about the freedom, the hanging out, just feeling like a woman on a beach and not a wife on the beach. And I honestly think that that's why my wife and I are somewhat happily married.
Nice. So basically what you're telling us is that she offered to pay and you decided not to go.
Yes, because I was not going to let her pay for my vacation because I would feel bad about it. I could barely afford the one we're going in Orlando. So it's all good. It's all good. Listen,
I also like that you're setting the bar low. You're like, a good marriage is simply don't hold them hostage.
That's it. That's it. You know,
Bar is low.
take the gag off every once in a while and let them make public phone calls. And you're in great shape.
I'm taking all these notes down, man, in my phone.
Hey, 11 years married. 11 years married. So far, so good.
So far, so good, man. I'm glad to have you guys here, man. I'm happy to be here again. Like Dr. Dan, I look forward to this every week. This is I stress it a lot, but then once you get on here, it flows so good, and I have we have a good time. So thank you for being here. Like I said, today we have Nick Alexander, comedian Nick Alexander, with us. Thank you for being here, brother. Since it's four of us now, we're gonna get right into it because we're gonna be short on time. So let's get into this round table talk, man. Eric, you wanna take it?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to start off. Do we want to start off with Nick leading off the round table?
Well, I think we should ask Dr. Dan a couple of questions. You have questions for Dr. Dan? Because I have a question for Dr. Dan, man, personally.
Well, why don't you go ahead and shoot? Maybe Nick also has a question for Dr.
Okay, Dr. Dan. Listen, man, last night was a very, very hard night for me for some reason. I felt like last night I had anxiety. I feel like I had like a panic attack. I couldn't sleep. And it was weird. Once in a while, we get those days, that just I get into my head and it was just all over the place. So my question to you, Dr. Dan, is for people who experience this, for men who have panic attacks, who have anxiety attacks, what would you tell them to do in that situation when they're going through that moment?
That's a great question, and I'm going to take a stab at it, but I reserve the right to add to this answer as we go because this is a discussion, and I want you all to jump in. You especially, Nick, if you got questions for me on it. See, the thing that I always do, and I do this for me too. Whatever I tell other people to do, I'm telling them, I tell myself to do too. Try to understand what's happening in that moment. What I want to guarantee you is you make sense. Whatever is going on for you, no matter how crazy it might feel, there is a reason for it. And the more you understand that your major themes, the major themes of who you are and what you experience could be driving this, the better off you'll be. What I would say is if you get to that point, back up. Think about what happened earlier in the day. What was in your day? Because your mind is always working on things.
Yeah, I mean, well, I could tell you exactly what was in my head. I've been feeling under the weather for the last few days, and I did get COVID tested on a few days ago, and I had not gotten my results. And last night, for some reason, I just I was having like a hard time breathing, but I knew I really wasn't. I felt like anxiety. I felt like something like I couldn't let it go, and I knew exactly what was going on. I just couldn't. I just couldn't get it out of my head, And like the whole night, I tossed and turned and tossed and turned. And this morning, I got my results and I'm negative. Thank God, everything is good. But it was just one of those feelings that I could not brush off. And talking to you and the experiences that we have from our other sessions that we do, I was really trying to get into it and I pinned it, but it still wouldn't go away. It was just like too much.
Well, one thing to keep in mind, you got to be kind to yourself about this. Your body too. Like if you're going through something, give yourself time and space to get through that a little bit. I know it's uncomfortable. It's no fun, especially if you're really worried about things, but try to trust that your mind will work things through and so will your body. And that will help you not panic as much about it. I mean, it's a funny thing to say, like you're trying to not panic about panicking, but it really is true. Mm-hmm. That's the worst part of panic is you start to panic about the panic and then it goes on and on and on. So if you can just dial it down a little bit and trust that it's going to right the ship as you figure it out, you're going to be fine.
Nice. Thank you, Dr. Dan. Thank you. What about you, Eric? You got a question for Dr. Dan?
No, I didn't really have any questions for Dr. Dan this week. I want to see if Nick has any questions for the doctor or just general statement or want to just offer something to the roundtable.
And Nick, let me. I'm going to take you off the hot seat here for a sec in case you were feeling on it.
Thank you.
You do not have to have questions for me now. You can ask questions for me throughout this. You can ask questions later. It doesn't matter to me. But if you do have questions now, I'm all ears.
I think one. Okay, so I definitely didn't have questions when Edgar was like, "Yeah, ask Dan anything." I was like, "Oh, I thought I was just going to be answering questions." But as I was listening, one thing I did want to ask for your opinion: how do you balance like resenting a situation and then accepting it? Like you're still actively doing what in your mind is the right thing while you're working through your resentment of the situation that you're in, or somewhat level of frustration or combination thereof.
That's a fantastic question. One of the things I talked about on one of my other podcasts is the idea that you can have really two parts to your life at the same time. There's the external part, how you live with other people, which has all these demands that are on you that you don't want. But then there's the internal you, like how you feel about it. And so this is going to sound really weird, but I'm going to put it out there, and I think it's really important for mental health. Inside, you want to let yourself have a pretty extreme experience. You should like rage about it inside. Be like, I hate this. I want to like kill that person. I want to get out of here. The more you let yourself have that extreme experience inside, the more you're going to be able to handle it outside. You have to have that. But I'm going to say one other thing too. You also do need, if you're going to do things that you don't want, you're going to need to give back to yourself. That's depleting of you. So even if you can't give back to yourself in that circumstance, give back to yourself somehow. This happens to me sometimes as an example. Maybe I worked a really long day and I'm thinking, well, I got to get to sleep. I need sleep. But there's some part of me that's like, but you know what? I really want to just sit up and hang out. Even though I'm going to be tired, I decide to give myself something that feels good to me. So the main thing I'll say, Nick, is give back to yourself. If you're having to do something you resent, it takes something out of you. You need to put something back in.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a great question. See, I knew he would have a great question.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
brilliant.
I know it.
What's up? You could tell he's been watching the podcast. To everyone listening and watching, please, if you have any questions, feel free to comment down below or send us each an email, a message, or personal message, and we'll definitely ask Dr. Dan a question. Those are two great questions, and I think now we should definitely move it along and do Dr. Dan's favorite part.
Nick, they love when I introduce it this way.
Yeah,
I don't even know why.
I love this.
I don't even know why.
Are you adding a song? Did you add a song to this intro? Is there?
I didn't, but I will. I'm gonna write a song called "Old News," maybe from yesterday.
So for this old news, Eric's gonna take it over. Eric, what's up?
Yeah, so we wanted to revisit a previous topic we talked about suicide in our country, specifically how it's broken down. Well, there was one article that kind of really struck me, was the number of police officers that committed suicide after the insurrection on January 6th. So up until this date, there's been 4 police officers that suffered such severe trauma during the insurrection that they killed themselves. And these are professionals that are trained to run into trauma, to deal directly with trauma, and yet they were overwhelmed by this traumatic experience. And when you look at some of the numbers, especially when it comes to men in suicide, they're startling. I mean, we're 3.6 times more likely to commit suicide than women. You know, we were 22 out of 100,000 per person compared to women 6 per 100,000. That's an extreme difference. Now, the attempts by women actually outnumber men, but men just end up doing it more successfully because they choose more lethal methods, like a gun or jumping, you know, from a bridge, where women from the research I did, they'll usually take pills or something that can be somewhat reversed and they can be saved. So women actually attempt suicide more, but men are succeeding more. And that scares me because I feel like I look at this number. There were 2.5 times the number of suicides in 2019 than there were homicides. Think about that. 2.5 times. There were over 47,000 suicides in 2019. There were only 19,000 homicides. When I say only, I'm not diminishing a homicide. Please don't take that.
Of course.
But to me, it just seems like an unreported disease. You know, a disease that doesn't get talked about enough, an issue that doesn't get talked about enough because of the stigma attached to it, because of the shame that some people may feel by it, and the reluctance to talk about it. And I know we talked about it previously, but I just think it's important, especially when you look at the numbers as they pertain to men.
Nick, tell me what you think about those numbers. When you hear those numbers, what do you think?
Was this statistic a result of 2020? So we're talking about with the pandemic into consideration, or even before that?
No, this is actually in 2019, pre-pandemic.
Wow.
So this was pre-pandemic. These numbers were this high.
I mean, as somebody who contemplated suicide and I mean on maybe a certain level attempted it, it does. I mean, I understand why people would want to take themselves out more before they think about putting, you know, take harm on somebody else's life and taking them out, because usually before you deal with resentment or pain against somebody else, you're dealing with it internally, like as you're growing up. Before you're thinking about hurting somebody or punching somebody, you're experiencing hurt first. You know, when you're adolescents and your teenage years, you know, the cycle of a violent thought against others, I think, comes along a lot later in a way. So I think the people who decide to commit suicide, they've been battling something that's probably been, you know, within them their whole entire life, as opposed to an action where, you know, somebody got robbed and then I wanted to go kill him because he took my Jordans or he took my stash, or another scenario where, you know, they were at a club and the shootout happens or whatever like that. So I think those thoughts are not within the individual as long as an internal pain that somebody's going through. You know? That's
a great point. I actually wanted to throw something out to you guys just to think about, and we can discuss this. In my experience, suicidal ideation comes up when there's a feeling that there is no way out. There's no good way to go. And I think Nick's hitting on something here, because with homicide, I don't think that's always the way that happens. I think a lot of times it's a blind rage or there's a revenge or something like that. But with suicide, there is usually a feeling that this situation is so bad and there is no way out with me being alive. And that pushes people in that direction. I'm curious what you guys think about that, but that's certainly been part of my experience with that.
So do you feel that these cops that took their own lives after the Capitol, incident, you think it was because they didn't have no one to talk to? You think it was just too much and they held it in? You know, like, I'm asking you, Dr. Dan, like, how do you feel? Like, what is your opinion towards this on these men that did this?
See, I think it's two things. One is they didn't have anybody to talk to, and that's one of the reasons I think this show is so important. We are promoting, hey, we're going to take out one of the major ingredients. Let's start talking to each other. But the other thing is this no way out sort of thing. And in a way, the talking is a way out. So we have to let people know, you know what? There is a way out. What I like to tell people about suicide is it's a horrible feeling of the moment. But if you can talk to somebody about it and give yourself some time and space to process what's happening, you will get to a better place. That's something people don't understand about suicide. It is almost always an impulsive thing. It's not usually the thing where people are like, yeah, I've been planning this for a year and thinking about it, and then I mean people do think about it, but a lot of times when people actually take action, it's an impulsive thing that is, and if they knew they could talk to people about it and they knew that there was going to be a supportive person on the other end, generally speaking, we'd be saving a lot of lives.
Because I think, especially when it comes to officers, to firemen, you know, men who have these jobs that have to be like so alert, so macho, so tough, because, you know, you can't show weakness in front of anybody as an officer. I think it's even harder for them to open up when it comes to talking about stuff. You know what I'm saying? I think it's so difficult to have a job where you got to be so tough and then come home and talk about it, and it's different. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, a few months ago, there was an incident out here in LA where there was a fireman, off-duty fireman, on his day off, went to the fire station, shot another fireman, and killed him and his captain. They shot his captain, then went home, threatened that if anyone came near his house, that he was gonna kill them. Went home, set his house on fire, and then killed himself. And for 4 hours, I saw this house burn on the news, and no one could approach it because they were afraid. He already killed the fireman, and nobody wanted to get. So they basically turned the fire off with helicopters. And it's crazy how, I mean, I think about it like this, and it's, you know, it's rational, like you say, like when it comes to the spur of the moment. I think the people who think about suicide and always like talking about it, those are the ones that are least bound to do it. It's spontaneous. The ones that something happens like that. But my question is, why is it so hard for them to talk? And then when they do decide to do this, why take someone else with you? You know?
I'll tell you the interesting thing about, if I could just offer a quick opinion on what I think really affected the officers in DC.
Yeah.
I think there are certain situations in law enforcement where you will never, ever think to expect what happened that day. You know, if you're working in the Capitol, it's not like you're working in the South Bronx. You don't have your guard up. You're not feeling that same danger. You're not in South Central LA. You're on the Capitol, where the senators and the president and the vice president live. And all of a sudden, that got uprooted. And these offices were raided by people who were defecating on desks and wanted to hang Mike Pence. I think this was an extreme case of trauma for these police officers, because they probably never had an inkling when they woke up that morning that they would be fighting their own citizens, trying to defend the offices of the Capitol. So every civil worker, every firefighter, every cop, I believe goes through it, because you can't put your life in danger and not go through it. That's just not possible. But in my opinion, when you look on the outside looking in, you think about when we were watching this and how stunned we were. Imagine if you had to work to defend it, and you had never had to deal with a situation like that before. And it's probably, they don't even know how to begin to talk about it, because no one in their right mind would think that would ever happen. It was just such a unique experience.
You're hitting on something really important, and it's this idea of trauma. When people have been through a trauma, they are much more likely to have suicidal ideation. And there's all kinds of professions where that is true, certainly with civil servants, with police officers, with soldiers, with firefighters. I mean, I would argue that it's actually true of comedians in a way, because comedians, listen, I'll leave it to you guys. You guys are the comedians. But in my experience, comedy comes from making tragedy into trying to find a way to laugh about it. It's a way of coping. That's my read on it. And I think, to me, when I've looked at people in comedy and their backgrounds, they've often had some kind of trauma. It's true of psychologists too, by the way. So I can totally relate.
We always knew there was something about you, Doctor.
Nick, what do you think about this idea of trauma and how it relates to suicide? Or maybe you don't see it that way. I'm curious.
No, I totally lived a somewhat sheltered life and a feeling of I think I suppressed a lot of what I always sort of felt inside. And when my friend unfortunately committed suicide, it unlocked a whole lot inside me. And then unfortunately, the ripple effect was that was I started feeling suicidal myself. Like I wanted to just kind of check out on everything because I just felt like the world took a lot from me, took a lot from people I care about, just all types of things that just struck at once. And I just, I'm still in a place where, I have to kind of talk myself up into finding reasons to want to keep existing and want to keep pushing, want to keep fighting. So, because the thought hasn't left me since I kind of had my breakdown.
Wow. And so, I mean, it does sound like, and this is not surprising, but it sounds like the loss of your friend in this way, which would be horrific for anybody. Really, one way we could put it is it was a trauma for you.
Yeah, it was just the most traumatic thing I've ever experienced. Actually, yeah. He lived, 10 minutes away from me, so there's that capacity of thinking about like, if I had just known something was going on, I could have maybe went over and tried to talk or help him. There's the just the idea that he was in the short time that we had as friends, which was about 4 or 5 years, we really grew so close, and we worked together in a lot of ways because he was a filmmaker and a comedian of some sorts because we were like in a sketch group and we wrote together, we did stuff, we partied together, we did a lot of things together. And to go through life without him, it's hard because the world I feel like is just a little less whatever because he's not here. And and seeing how his death impacted so many of my relationships and friendships and things like that, it just it makes it hard to kind of keep pushing sometimes.
Nick, do you mind my asking? Did you have any inkling that he was struggling? Was there?
Um, when I found out like how the events that transpired before he did shoot himself, and what happened was I knew he was. Well, we found out later he was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. And I had seen him have an episode or two before where like I've seen him kind of like be on, and it'd be very hard to calm him down in a certain sense, and he'd just kind of be ringing, be all over the place. He's not really listening or level headed. And when he made a mistake or did something accidentally, not being conscious of it, he would feel so bad and remorseful. And the situation was very similar to the events of the day he passed away, where he was, somebody he loved. He sort of hurt her. He wasn't even conscious of what he was doing because he was having somewhat of an episode. And when he, I guess tried to, calm himself down, or he felt like there was a panic and he made a super impulsive decision because of what he had around him, which was a gun, that he had, purchased, and he had a license and he was using it responsibly. But in that moment of panic and the state of his head, he felt like it wasn't worth going on, and he had to take the pain that was ringing in his head. So
Yeah, that speaks to the statistic that Eric was talking about at the beginning of this segment, and it really is true that, and it's part of the problems with guns is that they can work so quickly and so lethally.
Yeah,
And so
for
it's
sure.
very dangerous.
It's why I won't get one, because I probably under a state of a bad day where I, get some bad news, or I internalize, what frustrates me, and I'm very much now, I have a mild level of bipolar. It's bipolar 2, but I do experience mood swings or a state of just extreme emptiness or whatever, and so I probably won't even get a gun because I don't know, the wrong day it could just, yeah, honestly.
The the fact that you could admit that, that's a beautiful thing, when you could say something like that out loud. I want the viewers and listeners to know that Nick's friend, which is also my friend,
Our friend, yeah.
the reason that we did this podcast. You know what I'm saying? And I want you to save that story for when you do the walk later
Yeah.
more, so we could talk about it more. But that was the reason why we are all here today. You know what I'm saying? And it shocked me. And the day he did it, we were all texting, and I never knew it. And it's crazy how. I found out later about the bipolar and everything else, because when you see people in hanging out, you never notice stuff like that. And that's when Tariq passed. it scared the shit out of me. And I've said it numerous times in past episodes. It scared me to the point that I was like, I can't hold nothing in, and I want to talk. And it's a beautiful thing to at least see someone admit that, you know what, look, I'm bipolar. Look, I thought about this and I thought about that. Because that's the reason we're all here. We need to talk about these things. We can't hold things in. And that's the problem. And that's probably the same thing that happened with these cops. You know, it gets to the point that you got to be so tough. You're not going to go up to your coworker and be like, look, this is bothering me. You know what I'm saying? And then you don't have no one to talk at home. And it's sad that this is what we're getting to as men. You know, we don't know how to open up. And this is the reason why we're all here today, because we definitely need to open up more, you know?
Yeah. And another reason too, that kind of like it just took all of our mutual friends and, you know, us just taken aback because, you know, Tariq was somebody where like I said, I worked with Tariq in a lot of different fashions, and one of them being a sketch comedy group, improv group as well, that we performed together. And we had, as a group, you know, found out about two people who had committed suicide that who used to come to our shows, or we knew in some capacity. And Reek was the first one to say, hey, if something, you guys are going through something, you know, talk to somebody. You know, he did mention to us that he dealt with depression, and that he was at the time in his life talking to a therapist and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, you know,
I'm down
we
for
knew
breaking the
anything,
mold.
even
How
if
about
he
you,
got his
Dr. Dan?
issues or whatever like that, he still works on his stuff. And you know, other, you know, things over time, you know, kind of happened where he, you know, he didn't have his therapy because he was out of work at the time of when he passed away. And there's a lot of different components. I don't want to, you know, take up time so we can, you know, hit the subjects. But yeah, so it was like, and also he was like the life of our party always, you know, the funniest guy, the happiest guy, just the dude who laughs the most. And that's another thing that hurts, because it's like, damn, like the one who laughs and gives us the most great times and memories was suffering like so much at times, and we never even really knew to the extent of it.
The times is the one that you least expected the most.
Yeah.
That's the hard part, you know. It's the one that you were least expected from. You know what I'm saying? But moving forward, I think we should do like a Do you want to do a break in the mold, Eric? Just to like break this ice a little, and then we could go into the next walk in the walk.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea, because look, these are really heavy topics, and I want to say this really seriously. It's like we have to get used to the fact that we can talk about these things and still have our other side. We can have the light side, we can joke, and you're going to need to. The important thing is to not feel locked into either one, because like if you are, especially for comedians, and look, I in my group of friends, I'm always making people laugh. I remember being like, I can't tell them how serious some things are, and which is ridiculous now that I think about it. But that's the mindset we get into. So Nick, breaking the mold is this time where we talk, and this sometimes can be pretty silly, actually.
Cool. I'm down to break some mold. It's all good.
Yeah, let's do it. So, Edgar, I'll just introduce the idea of it, and you jump in as needed. But the idea is we talk about ways that we feel that we are different than your quote unquote typical man. Edgar, you expound on it. Tell more about it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we all as men, you know, like we're just because we're men don't mean that we all know how to do the same thing, and that's what breaking the mold is. We're all men, but we're all different in each way, you know. And like Eric brought it up last week, and I thought it was great, like the whole romantic movie, you know, comedy and everything else. And
How about Edgar doesn't know sports?
I don't know shit about sports.
Not even baseball.
Not even baseball. He knows some names. But then again, I can't put IKEA furniture together by myself. I need to have my sister help. So that's how I break the mold.
Me neither.
Thank you. I'm not the only one. I'm so happy.
I'm useless when it comes to handiwork and maintenance. I don't know how to do any of that. I don't cook either. Yeah.
You know,
we'll all have to rely on Edgar for that.
Exactly. He's a fix-it guy.
That's the
Edgar's
only
great.
thing I'm good at. But listen, Nick. So since Eric brought this up last week, and I want to follow up on it because I think it's great. Let me ask you, what is one romantic movie that you like? Like you know, a lot of men won't admit this. A lot of men won't talk. Like when you meet with your boys, you'll be like, "Yo, son, yo, father of the bride." You know, my best friend's wedding, it was amazing. You know, you never hear this. So I want to hear from you personally. What's one? Like I was gonna say chick flick. I was gonna mess up, Eric.
You almost backtracked.
But what's one romantic movie that you like and you want to share with us today?
Okay, so on the pure like romantic tip, And he's very good with this, and he doesn't get a lot of props. But I think Sandler, right? He makes great romance films, like The Wedding Singer, 50 First Dates. I think you mentioned on a pod before. He always just has enough of that cheese and the love, along with some jokes here and there and some stupid juvenile stuff. But he does a great job of that. So I love those movies. My favorite of all time is Boomerang. We talked about Boomerang. I think it's a great blend of rom and com. But I think on that pure romance tip, I say I love big, She's All That. I grew up to that. I love what's the Julia Roberts one? Not Pretty Woman. It's another one. We just watched it the other day. It's the one where she like
Notting Hill.
not Notting Hill. The one where she has the friend who wants to break up the wedding.
Oh, My Best Friend's Wedding. My Best Friend's Wedding.
Yeah, that was peak Julia, man. I love those films because it's just like it's it takes the world and stuff.
Cameron Diaz was in that too.
Yeah, that was young Cameron.
I just thought about this, Nick. I know Nick for a while now. I remember when Nick started doing comedy, and I always see Nick as the young kid in the group. You know what I'm saying? But I remember when Nick,
Edgar's known me since I was like 19, 20. Yeah.
When you first moved out here and you started driving, you remember what you did, Nick, with your car? The time you put gas, you remember that?
What did I do?
You want to tell people how you break the mold the first time you put gas in your car and what you did? You remember that?
Are you talking about the story when I was in Florida with my mom's car?
That you put diesel instead of gas.
So I was doing something. I thought I was doing something nice for my mom. I was in Florida. She lives in Florida, and I was going to go see a friend, a comic, to work on a self tape or something. And I was like, I'm gonna put some money in my mom's car, put some gas in the car. And I thought I was doing a good deed by putting diesel in a car because you hear that diesel is good fuel. So I had no idea that diesel does not work on a regular car. So when I'm driving from Fort Lauderdale to like Miami, the car starts like stopping. And then it's like making sounds and it kind of goes again. And I'm like, man, this is kind of weird. The car's just acting up. And by the time I got to my friend's house and then worked on my thing and we came back, the car was done. Like we couldn't get it at all. And we had to get it towed to undo the diesel damage. And luckily we caught it in time to save the car. But yeah, I put diesel in my mom's car. I loaded her tank up with diesel on a Nissan Sentra.
That's a break in the mold right there, right?
That's breaking the engine. That's not breaking the mold. That's breaking the manifold.
When I told Edgar that, man, Edgar laughed me off for like an hour. You did what?
Oh man.
Usually, you know how when you put diesel in a car, the nozzle on the diesel, it's actually bigger, so it won't actually go into like a regular gas tank. That's how you determine the difference. I don't know how
Florida gas stations, man. It took that car.
Before Sentra.
This whole
Sentra.
I killed the Sentra, and then it was stopping, and then I'm like at the lights red, cars are honking at me. I'm like, damn, I need this car. Come on, what's going on? And not realizing I'm just damaging my mom's car minute by minute.
But see, this is what I love.
It came from a pure place.
This is what I love about hanging out with comedians. This is what I love about hanging out with comedians, though. You guys can turn anything into a riff, and I do that too. And I love how you can talk so comfortably.
My grandmother paid for. My grandmother had to save the car.
Oh.
So basically, fellas, everybody listening, man, that's breaking the mold, man. We're all men, but we don't all know how to do the same things, and all of us are different in each way, man. And it's nothing to be embarrassed about, and not, just definitely talk. And now moving forward, because we're pushing on time, we're gonna get into the walking the walk, man. You fellas, you ready for this?
Man.
So basically, walking the walk is it's a segment where when we started this podcast, I can't come on here and tell people to talk. You know what I'm saying? I tell people find someone to talk to. Not everybody's gonna listen to you. Not everybody's gonna be that ear, but always find someone to talk to. And we can't come on here and encourage people to talk. And if we don't do it ourselves. So walking the walk is a segment where we like to talk about something that's either bothering us now, has bothered us in the past, or something that we want to get off our chest that no one knows. And last week, Eric walked the walk, and it was very interesting, Eric. And I want to ask you before we get into Nick's walking the walk, how do you feel about last week, brother?
It actually felt great. I was actually talking to Nick a little bit before we started taping the show. And I told him it was like, it was something I hadn't talked about since, openly in front of people like that since 1989. But it felt like a weight, just kind of, you know what I mean? Like it felt liberating to me to just talk about it openly and to just kind of face what that what that time meant to me and how it impacted me, you know? So it's great. And that's one of the best things about when you talk is that you get it out and it allows you to analyze it, not just to be analyzed by others, but for you to actually analyze it because you're hearing it out loud and you're hearing it in the form of a sentence and not a thought rattling around in your head. And it allows you to see things with a clearer perspective because you've made a statement instead of just a thought. I don't know if that makes sense, but sometimes when you talk things through and you hear yourself, things just make more sense. And that I understood the situation a lot more after I talked about it out loud.
That's a beautiful thing. That's the whole purpose about this. Even when I did my walk in the walk, I don't know about you, but when I did mine, that first night, I got into my own head. I was like, oh my God, you know, and I started thinking about it. And then I realized that me holding my stuff in so long, God knows the damage that it did to me, but it also made me feel good. Like the first couple of nights I was thinking, going crazy, but then as we move on, it makes you feel better. And that's what we want to show the listeners, that, you know what, letting things out that we hold in, and just because we forget about things doesn't mean that, you know, we can move on. Sometimes we feel like, oh, you know what, I forgot about it, it's done, you know. And no, you don't know the damage that could cause you. And yo, I thank you, brother. Thank you for opening up. And as your boy, I didn't even know that. And I'm very happy that you did open up. I'm glad that you're feeling better. And now I want to get into Nick's walk in the walk. Before we get into Nick, like I said, Nick and I had Tariq Jackson, which is our friend in common. And I feel like Tariq's death messed me up, Nick. Messed me up in a different way that it did with you. You know, like death opened my eyes, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta talk. But I also see how you took it, and as your boy, I mean, I know you took it hard, and it was very hard for you. And I want you to talk about that. I want you to do that walk in the walk, and hopefully get something out where Dr. Dan can help you and all of us at the same time. So, ladies and gentlemen, for our very first guest, Nick Alexander walks the walk. Let's do it, brother.
Yeah, it's man, I'm getting emotional thinking about it because this month is the month he passed away. This will be the year since he passed.
Don't be afraid. There's no judgment here, man. You know, like just talk to us.
It was the hardest thing because like throughout the pandemic, you know, my livelihood being a comedian and actor, whatever, performing got taken away. So that was like one level of stress we were just dealing with, like the artist side. Then, you know, I'm home every day, not really, you know, not knowing how life is gonna go, trying to adjust. That's a second stress. Then there's the black people and minorities just getting killed by the police and us protesting and all the racial stuff going on. So you feel hated in a sense by the world, and like that was like a third or fourth stress. But like through that time, through March, April, May, June, July, August, me, Reek, and our mutual friends were just keeping each other's spirits lifted. We had our group texts. Me and Reek were in like 5 different group texts, and we were just talking to each other. We were writing stuff. We were doing Zoom calls. We were just being creative. When we were able to kind of go outside, I saw him a little bit. We protested together. You know what I'm saying? The one and only time where I went out with my girlfriend to go protest, we protested with Reek. You know, he did my shows. I lost my grandfather in Haiti. That's where my family's from. I couldn't even go to the funeral because by that time travel restrictions were banned. So I had to mourn my grandfather, you know, in a sense virtually, because that was the only service that they could do to give him a proper goodbye for the people that couldn't be here. That happened like July. So then when he goes, I just feel like my world really ripped apart, like just shattered. And over time, what happened was I had like fire in my chest. I felt like a level of anger at the world, at people, because we were also we had a situation where we were working creatively on something, and we were going back and forth with this other artist, and it was like lawyers and stress, and that was a taxing anxiety on Reek as well as myself. So I know like several stresses that Reek was dealing with internally, and then this happens, and it's like I'm not sleeping for like days. Like I go 2-3 hours, I'm not sleeping. Then what starts happening to me is that I become super manic. So I'm in rage mode. When I'm talking to people, if I feel any sort of slight disrespect or they're not getting it, without hesitation, I'm just cursing people out. I'm screaming. I'm talking about the world and life and Reek, and just I'm going on like 2 hour like monologues damn near every time I'm on FaceTime with somebody or in a conversation with somebody trying to like just get through and grieve. And after about a week of that, his mom called me to ask me to go to the hospital to check myself into to a hospital because she had heard about how I've just been raging, how I've been spazzing on people. People just are scared. I'm so intense that like I'm scaring my friends. I don't know if I ever did that with Edgar. Maybe he saw some of that on a Zoom call or something like that. I was not easy to be around, and I didn't really want to be around people. I wanted to be by myself away because I was ready to just do whatever and just to get some sort of peace and understanding. I'm calling, but at the same time though, I'm calling everybody or answering everybody's text message or phone call or questions about what happened to Reek. I had his blessing from his girlfriend to let people know what's going on so that she wouldn't have to do that. So I'm carrying that burden for her, somewhat his family in a way. Privately, I would just tell people and walk it through for them what happened to him and the things that he was dealing with for the ones who kind of like didn't keep in touch with him or weren't as close with him the last couple of years, because everybody knew that me and Reek were like this the last 3-4 years of his life. So then when I finally checked myself into the hospital, because at this point I'm letting everybody know, yo, if I don't get this kind of help that I specifically need, then I'm gonna do something to myself. Pretty much, I'm not ready. I'm ready to check out. So I kept doing that, and then my friends were like, all right, we gotta take him to a hospital. We gotta get him away from whoever he doesn't want to be around. So when I go to Cedars, I admit to them that yeah, I did feel suicidal. I in a way I still regret that. I wish I hadn't, because I had this like wherewithal the whole time that I was manic and raging, that I know better than what people can understand right now, and if you do what I tell you to do, it's going to be fine, but you got to do that for me. And if you don't do that for me, it's just going to keep making me angry and just keep making me rah rah. But if you listen to me, what I'm trying to tell you and advise you to do, it's going to work out. But whenever you're putting up any resistance to what I'm asking for, I'm in straight rage mode. So, but I admitted I was feeling suicidal. So then what happened was they kind of did what they did, and then when I eventually passed out just from energy and just whatever, not eating, not sleeping, I was in a psych hold for like 3-4 days. And then I realized, okay, even though I'm feeling crazy, I'm not as crazy as these people that I'm around, and I got to get the hell out of here. So I actually, even though I wasn't fit to kind of be cleared, I was able to convince them to let me go a little early. As like, it was kind of like doing like the greatest acting job I probably have ever done in my life, because the whole time I'm dealing with my rage and people can see that I'm off, I knew when I had to, I can act a certain way to convince people that I'm okay in a certain way. So it was a lot of that, and I was pretty much manic and just really not myself for probably like 2-3 months, because after that it was getting myself right, getting a therapist, but that was required, taking Seroquel, that's what helps my anxiety, so that I can calm down and sleep at night, because if not, my mind is up, I'll stay up the whole night. I just, my brain doesn't shut off like it used to. But yeah, I was a different person, man. I was, cursing anybody out. My mom came out to LA to stay with me for a week. I remember I was fighting with her the whole time she was at her Airbnb. I'm cussing my mom out. I cussed my grandmother out on the phone. I had never, even if when I would argue with my grandmother about things that I disagree with her, but I never was cursing her out. And I was cursing her out. I was cussing my dad out, because anybody who I had something with or whatever, I unpacked all my feelings that I suppressed. Like I said, something broke inside me as well that unlocked all these things throughout my life. So it was tied to Reek's death, because it's like a thing just shattered, and it all came out, and it kept coming out. And I was always on the phone, always on a FaceTime, on a Zoom. I think after I got out the hospital, I think I had a Zoom with Edgar and like 20 of our friends, because everybody was at that point worried about me, like really, really, really worried about me. And I had to kind of assure them that I'm gonna be fine in time, but if you guys don't listen to me, it only makes it worse, because then I just keep raging, and I keep, whatever. And even to this day, like I said, about probably not till November, December is when I started feeling like somewhat of my old self on a day-to-day basis. But even now, man, sometimes when I get provoked or I'm feeling frustrated or I get just bad news, a dose of like multiple sets of bad news, or when I just get mad, I can kind of feel that rage side still coming back that I have to fight. Like it's still there. I have to always work harder to kind of suppress it because when I'm out there, I get too intense and too scary. And I was never known to be that kind of person. Like usually, my face has always been very non-threatening, and I'm smiling, I'm laughing, I'm silly. So when that happened to me, people were just so taken aback because they never seen me act like that in my life, you know. And I still regret how I was with people, how I treated people. I felt bad. I felt like I was such a burden that maybe I might have scared some of my friends. Maybe I might have made them say, well, I'm always gonna mess with Nick, but I gotta fall back because he's just too much. Because I think about everything, I overanalyze, and I still, I'm trying to get better. But yeah, man, some days most days it's still like I gotta fight to want to be here. And another thing that made another piece of big stress on me that people didn't understand, and I do talk about it in my stand up, but a week before Reek passed, I found out from my girlfriend was pregnant. So it was like, damn, this good news that we received, even though I at the time I just was not ready to even consider having a child because I felt like in my situation right now, I'm not working. We're in this pandemic. This is not the ideal time that I wanted to have a child. This is this is happening. It's a blessing in a certain life for sure. And then a week later, my best friend died. So my whole pregnancy, I didn't really enjoy. I was, I didn't get to appreciate that. And even though we had our shower and good moments of family love and rejoice, I never felt rejoiced at all about it because it was just like my friend's dead. I still got to figure my career out. I have to more than ever now lock in because it only gets harder trying to support a family now when I was barely supporting myself prior and my lady prior. So I'm still carrying that stress and working through it, but I'm actively trying to do the right thing.
Wow.
I want everyone to know that I knew you took it hard, we all cried, and I knew that you took it hard. And one thing that I do appreciate that through everything that you went through, when you did that Zoom call, like we got a text from Nick and he was like, dude, I need to catch up with you guys and I need to bring you up to date on what's going on. No one knew. So he texted the group chat. So I thought the Zoom was going to be just the five of us, the six of us who was in that group chat. And dude, it was like 50 people on this Zoom. I'm like, what is this? I'm like, what was going on?
Yeah, it was family. It was close
It was
friends of
family,
different
it was
circles. My
friends.
best stand-up friends, my inner. It was a lot of the people who I felt who need to be here for this.
And when you did it, then I realized I was like, this is what he needed to do. This is what I appreciate you and I admire you for that, for actually opening up because you felt like you had to open up and let everyone know what was going on in your life. And I appreciate that because, even though I didn't understand it at the moment, but then I'm like, yo, this is how he's scoping. This is how he does it. And this is the reason why we're here because we do need to talk. We need to let it out. And I know it was hard and I know everything else, but I don't want to take too much time because I want Dr. Dan to talk about this and let them know how you feel about this, Dr. Dan.
I'm sorry, this is just my last thing. And I just want to really point this out, man. Every conversation that I had with somebody in my life post Reek passing was a fight for survival. Every conversation mattered. It got me through every time, whether it was 20 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, whatever. It was all a way in my mind that it kept me from just to keep going. So it was important, especially that Zoom call, to just let everybody from all my walks of life understand I'm fighting. This is how I have to fight though, because it makes sense to me right for that in that way.
Yeah. I think it's so great what you said. It's so brave that you're sharing with us, and I'm honored that you share with me. There were a couple things that jumped out at me that I thought I would just share with you, Nick, because I think they'll be helpful to you, and they're things that you can hold on to. They're things that I think you'll feel really good about yourself about, because the thing that I was hearing that jumped out at me absolutely most out of everything is that at some level you knew what you needed. And it's kind of like what Edgar's saying. And you were saying, listen, I know what it looks like, but if you listen to me, this will be fine.
Yeah.
And I think you were right. I think you were right the whole time. That's one of the problems that people tend to run into when trauma happens. They don't listen to the traumatized person as if, no, you don't know.
Yeah.
You're the one person who does know.
Yeah. I know I look crazy. I know I sound crazy, but please, if you just give me what I'm asking for, I'm going to be fine.
Well, let me say this too. You weren't crazy. Trauma makes people look crazy because they're in a situation that is crazy. The situation is crazy.
Yeah.
To be dealing with that kind of loss with somebody that meant that much to you and have it happen in that way. What happens with trauma is people feel like nobody can understand. So they're actually desperate to talk. A lot of times they don't. But to your credit, you did. You fought for those conversations, and I think you saved your life. You know, I know the people who listened did, and listen, this is really important. We talk about how important it is to talk. It's maybe even more important to listen, to hear where that person is. But I applaud you because you fought for that.
I did. And I'm thankful to Edgar. I'm thankful to, my family, because this was just, it was super foreign. They did not know how to handle this or how to handle me in my state. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of, work. My mom, I told, we put it under the bridge about her one trip to LA when she came. And it was just like, yeah, I know I was a lot, but like, I'm glad you just didn't give up on me. You took it. She would cuss back. She would cuss back at me. Like if I was talking to my girl a certain way because I was in that mode, she was like, hey, don't talk to her. You talk to me if you need to, whatever. And that worked. It all helped. And I'm glad my family, my friends, worked with me.
Yeah, I mean, I think it took a lot. It took a lot to do that Zoom call, I mean, a lot of us struggle with just sharing with one person, just talking to one person. The fact that you opened up to all those people, I got to give you all the credit in the world. And it's crazy how, like, I had not even think about it. My hands are standing up because it is the month. It is a year already. It is a year. I remember when I first moved into this place. I mean, September, and it's crazy, but thank you for sharing that with us, brother. And I want you to know
Can
that.
I ask you a question, Nick, before we leave?
Whatever you want to ask me. What's up?
Well, I want to ask you two questions. First of all,
Yeah.
how old's the baby now?
So my daughter is she's 3.5 months. She was born on May 13th. So yeah, coming up on 4. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the world to her.
She's healthy. Natalia.
That's one.
Yeah.
And two, I wanted to ask you, because you said something that struck me as well in the conversations that you had with your friends and family were battles for survival and helped you survive. I know when people are in a dark place, they feel like they have a limited support system or a lack of love in their lives. Did this experience open your eyes to show you the kind of support that you have when all these people came out and were so concerned about you?
It did, and I don't want to sound like too sadistic because in my head I felt like I was in a way being a control or like a puppet kind of thing. It's a weird complex I had put it in my head. But when I demanded certain people in my life who I knew I needed to kind of come through because I know they'll understand or they'll help. And this is because I say it like this because there's, as we know in entertainment, we have certain friends who are of a certain status who might have resources or who just might be able to help you in certain instances. And when I was able to just force the people to get in touch with them so that they can talk to me, that helped. When I needed to get to, my guys in this walk of life, it helped. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I totally, I had to pull these certain strings for my survival. It was just like I knew I needed them for this kind of support because my family's not going to understand what's going on with me in LA right now. They need to talk to them and make them understand, hey, we got them here so that if I did come to New York or do something, I was afraid, my folks would maybe want to put me in a mental institution because in our culture, if you kind of like sounding off the rails, they think the first thing you need is a psycho or a psychiatric clinic. And I knew I didn't need that. That's not what I needed. I just needed a different type of help. But my folks who were with me here were able to communicate to them because I know in my state, I couldn't communicate to them properly what I'm dealing with. But they were watching me, seeing me, spending time with me so they can say, hey, look, we got him. It's going to be all right. But it was a certain friendship, a certain relationship that I needed for them to make that call. So it was like I had to kind of keep these things happening to, you know, to just to make it through. It feels weird because, like I said, I don't want to make it sound like I was using people, because I wasn't, but I needed certain things to be in play for the you know, just to keep going, to make sure that I came out all right, that nothing, you know, extra would happen or whatever.
Well, when people,
the question, I'm sorry,
No, that was thank you. That was
Yeah.
that was beautiful.
I think that when people go through a horrific trauma, one of the things that goes on for them is they are desperate to have their story understood.
I was super desperate for that. Yeah.
And so that's where I really understand that every conversation would have been kind of life or death. Like, are you going to show up and understand this?
Yeah.
Or am I going to have that deep, and more than frustration? You talked about resentment at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
The amount of resentment you'd have having to live through this, and then have, you know, unfortunately, there are plenty of people out there who don't do a good job listening, or don't imagine their way into what it would actually have been like for you. But it does sound like you had enough people who heard you, and to your credit, you were not willing to take no for an answer about that. And that's what people need to do.
Yeah, totally. I couldn't, you know, it was, I wasn't going to make it if this didn't happen, or if this thing doesn't, it was like, it's going to kill me. It's going to keep killing my spirit and make me to just want to say, I don't want to be here anymore. Bye. Like, just, I'll find something, you know, I'll go crash my car or drive it into the water, or like, fuck, and, you know, excuse my language, you know, I was ready to say F it, you know, I was ready to go. I was in a car. I probably shouldn't have been driving, and I just turned the speed up, and I was just like, I could just do it right here. Like, you know.
Look, it's similar to having a gun by you. If you're driving a car and you're in that state, it can be very dangerous. But what I'm really heartened to hear, and I think it speaks well of how you're going to be able to move forward in your life despite this tragedy.
Yeah.
And, you know, maybe carrying on Reek's memory, is that, you know, you listened to your soul and what you needed, and I recommend that you continue to do that always.
Thank you. Yeah.
Always.
And that was the first time I think I ever really did listen to my soul. I felt like probably what made me want to bring up other things in my life to whoever I had a specific conversation with was because I had made a bunch of decisions that were against what my soul wanted. Yeah. And so it was, for this thing, I gotta let my soul go all out, and y'all gotta, you know, respect what my soul wants me to do in a way, because I probably ignored it so much but with Reek's tragedy and how it affected me, I had to listen to it in the best way I could, you know.
And, you know, I've been through a time like that. Actually, guys, if we end up doing another Walking the Walk with me, I know exactly what I'm talking about, because it was one of these times.
Yeah.
And when you honor your soul for the first time, it's a very, very intense and important period. But if you can get through it, you live the rest of your life better. And yeah. I think that's what's coming for you.
I was so drained, you know, after a certain thing. Like after I got out of the hospital, I think that was like the beginning of October. Me and mutual friends, we worked to put together like a celebration for Tariq, and we had it like where we showcased a lot of his stuff at a movie theater and did like a big thing for him. And after that was finished, that was like the time where I could finally say, you can rest, you can relax your brain. You did it. You did this deed that you wanted to do for your friend, you know. But it took me like 3 months to kind of get down. And even, like I said, even after that, I was still like working my way through it. But it still, you know, yeah, it took a long time.
Well, yo, thank you for sharing, man. And I want the viewers and listeners to know that, yo,
thank you.
Talking helps, man. And I did worry about you a lot, you know, especially after you did that Zoom and you told us, you know, I checked in on you, and I'm glad that you have people there who care for you, and I'm glad that you vented out. And I want the viewers and listeners to know that sometimes all you need to do is reach out and talk, you know. And thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that you were here today. I told myself the day I did this podcast, I told myself Nick is going to be my first guest, because this podcast will always be dedicated to Reek. and
Thank
I'm
you.
glad that and actually it's crazy how it fell on the month of the year,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I know it's hard for all of us, but it opened my eyes and it opened your eyes, and I'm glad that you're here. And know, brother, that I'm always here for you. I love you.
Thank you. Love you too, guys.
You need me, I will always be there. And to everyone listening, man, mental health is a real serious topic, man. Sometimes, don't hold things in, man. Let things out, and you'll know and see who really cares for you, man. And
Yeah.
are we here today?
Y'all
Any
showed up.
final thoughts, Dr. Dan?
Again, I'm just going to echo what I said before. Keep honoring your soul. You did a beautiful job. And I want you to feel good about that. I mean, you listened somewhere within you, and ultimately that's kind of the part of you that wanted to live was going to fight for that. So you always have to listen to that. Not just you, Nick, but everybody out there. Listen to what you need and fight for it. Nick did a beautiful job doing that. And I'm honored you shared it with me. I'm honored that, Edgar, you created this show out of this event and included me in it. I'm always honored that, Eric's involvement and how his kind way, often better than most therapists, if not all of them. This is a special group, and Nick, I think you fit right in. I'm honored you were here.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to really share this because this is like my first time really speaking about it, and outside of who knows about what happened to me. So I can't wait to share it, and hopefully it helps people. Obviously that's what we want to do, is to help.
I think this is going to help a lot of people.
Eric?
I'll echo what Dr. Dan said. I'm honored that you're here with us. I'm honored that you were brave enough to tell your story, and I hope you inspire more people to tell their stories and deal with what they're dealing with head on the way you did. And I hope to see you back on the show again, just to do another break in the mold.
I'll anytime, man. Whatever you guys want me back, I'll come back.
Definitely, man. Thank you, brother. I think we went a little bit over than what we should, but Dr. Dan, why don't you take us out, brother?
Time to take us out. All right, guys. So for all you out there, if you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below, and we will get back to you personally.
Brothers in arms.
Brothers in arms. Nick, thank you again, bro.
Thank you.